Welcome back. In this video, we're going to dive into the framework. This is part 2 of our 3-part quick start guide for the VentureMap Elite community. I am currently running a fantastic tool. It's a tool I've recommended very often. And in fact, it's probably one of the tools I've recommended the most often after Miro and GPT, and that's Sunsama. There's a number of other tools that do a similar function. I personally like Sunsama. And in terms of task execution and focused monotasking, I have yet to find one that I like better. And trust me, I have tried. It's well worth the $20 a month. I do my best to run the same discipline that I encourage you fine folks to do myself. All right, let's get into the framework. So in the last video, we looked at the tools. We talked about Miro, we talked about ChatGPT and Gamma and the whole range of tools. If you missed that somehow, or you need a refresher, just punch backwards and watch that. In this video, we're going to talk about the framework. The first thing you see inside of Miro with your VentureMap template plugged in is this massive green space. Now, let me just start off by saying it is not for everybody. There's a lot of people that this won't work for. For example, just like the basics on standard usability being the fact that it's colored in such a specific way, frankly, to suit yours truly. It's colored in such a way that it works really well with my brain. You can change your VentureMap color to whatever you want. The green and the sort of the monochromatic look, it's great. Interestingly enough, if you put on super aggressive blue blockers, the color of the board mostly stays the same. So that's kind of interesting. So it actually it's basically where certain wavelengths of color affect information processing. So over the years, this is just what I've naturally gravitated towards as an outpouring of my own notes and what I've found to make the most sense to be logically coherent as a way to visually depict an entire business. So this is a work in progress. It's certainly an evolving concept, but this is where we're at today. So this is what you'll see. What does this actually mean in the real world? Well, after dozens, if not hundreds of iterations, we've landed on a structure that is basically this. It's 2 panels overlapping, and we'll get into it. But before we talk about shapes, let's talk about the historical basis for it. Sun Tzu, an ancient Chinese philosopher from the Art of War, he says that strategy without tactics is the slowest route to victory, and tactics without strategy is the noise before defeat. Now, I love this because it highlights the caricature on either side of the spectrum. On one side, you've got the academic, or someone who's in analysis paralysis is probably a better way to say it. And this is the person who luxuriates in contemplative activities and contemplative affairs, and they struggle, if ever, to get into the world of action. And that's what business is all about, is execution. Now, on the flip side, you see the caricature of the Tasmanian devil, of the individual who's on the path towards the inevitable burnout. This is the person who is taking action nonstop. That's mostly ill-informed. They don't really have much of a strategy defined, if at all. It happens in a moment's notice, and there's neural synapses, and then they execute. This is the kind of person that sees a lot of churn or attrition on the team side when they do bring on employees, but it's also someone that they see a lot of churn on the customer side as well, because of a number of reasons, inconsistency in the customer experience being one of them. The balance between our strategy and our execution or tactics is critical. The interrelation between the two has to be appreciated. You can't have one without the other. Even if you've over-indexed on one or the other, they're still inherently related. And that's a central theme to the framework here. So we'll get into the first part. We've called this strategy in the past. As we've developed and matured the capability set, we believe organization is the most effective way to view it for a number of reasons. Organization houses collateral that could fall underneath these categories: your culture, your brand, business architecture, growth plan. The majority of things we would consider close to static collateral. In general, these are the things we'd see updated on a quarterly basis, perhaps even an annual basis at some points. And even Further, I would stretch to say a lot of it would be reviewed and fine-tuned. We wouldn't see a lot of significant adjustments to things. For example, if we have a really well-established brand identity, uh, whereas if we're working on a strategy and initiative and capability cross map within our business architecture, that's something that may be updated on a quarterly basis. And the growth plan, in fact, may be updated on a monthly or even biweekly basis, depending on a few factors. So the static collateral definition generally applies to our organization space. And that's how we look at it. That's how we house everything in that space. Another way to kind of think of it is the fuel cell for the customer and employee experience. Now, all of that's fantastic, but there's no shortage of people who have Google Drive filled with static collateral that's just collecting digital dust, dying an unceremonious death, never to be found again, thousands of folders deep in their drive. And that's really the total polar opposite of what we're trying to do here. We're trying to build knowledge bases that integrate seamlessly into our operations workflows and enable effective strategy execution. These knowledge bases, ideally, when they're high accuracy and very relevant, are plugged into LLMs, they're plugged into our AI agents, and they enable more rapid and effective execution of our strategies, be it through content marketing, funnel design, or otherwise. Now, that brings us into operations. This is the second panel that's overlapping our operations. Just like Sun Tzu talked about strategy and tactics, there's two different sides of the coin. They are both interrelated. Here, this is where we track our KPIs. This is where our current initiatives are taking place. This is where what we've planned is actually happening. It's the difference between deliberate and emergent strategy. The overlap between the two is the most important part of this entire project. It's the highest leverage part. And if you do nothing else besides figure out your quarterly plan, but focus here, you'll be successful. Specifically, experience is how we view the overlap. Experience for both our customers, that's acquisition and fulfillment, and our team or our employees, and that's recruitment and retention. We use a standardized model to track our customer lifecycle and employee lifecycle. That's a amalgamation or a fusion between a number of schools of thought. Primarily big contributions from Joey Coleman's work on Never Lose a Customer and Never Lose an Employee Again. The majority of post-purchase or retention, to use employee experience language, has been informed by the Coleman methodology. So you think everything after commit or conversion is effectively Coleman. Prior to that, we see a mixture between Donald Miller's from Business Made Simple, Russell Brunson from Traffic Secrets, then really just very standardized best practice, for example, traffic, top of funnel, mid funnel, and sales. So there will be further trainings with the life cycle phases, best practices within each phase, as well as how we build out functional areas that are cross-mapped to roles on the org chart and SOPs and follow-on trainings. But this is effectively what the VentureMap framework looks like. We have our organization, we have our operations, and the heaviest hitting, highest leverage piece of all of it is the experience. So that is the 2D representation of how we visually depict the entirety of a small business in one virtual space. If it sounds like a lot, that's probably because it is. But the good news for you is all you have to worry about is getting a beachhead. And I'll walk you through that step by step. Once we get a foothold into your map, from there, we'll focus on getting you set up with habit stacking, with monotasking, using a few very effective tools. So you're showing up on a daily and weekly basis with your team to actually execute the strategy that we've defined to move the business forward. And concurrently, we'll be working to develop very high quality, accurate knowledge bases or repositories of proprietary IP that will be interfaced and integrated with large language models to further enable execution. So there'll be additional discussions around the so-called Z plane, or how we dimensionalize the venture map to put viewports on top of it so you can effectively communicate with an AI COO, and your entire team can communicate with a business that's self-aware and self-improving, and how that is constantly iterating or revising the data layer underneath of the blueprint. All right, but for now, that's all we've got on the framework. Next step from here is to dive into the third video, which is the methodology. Thanks again, and I look forward to seeing you in there.